All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. In our lecture today, we're going to be talking about the second of the progressive presidents, the big man, Laffy Taffy. Don't ever call him that to his face, though. It's William Howard Taft. Now, there was a malicious rumor, rumors, about President Taft that he had once gotten stuck in the White House bathtub. He was very large. He was over 350 pounds. He was our greatest president. And when I say greatest, I don't necessarily mean our best. I mean our biggest. But the rumor was false. Taft never got stuck in the White House bathtub. He actually got stuck in a train bathtub because train bathtubs are a lot smaller in specifications. Anyway, sorry, no more jokes about his size, about his girth. Taft is going to be progressive in the same sense that Teddy was as far as trust busting. Remember, Teddy had his square deal, making a square deal for you, using his bully pulpit. Bully, Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt's like the Energizer Bunny, though. He's got enormous, tremendous energy, our youngest president we've ever had, using the White House, using the governments, the power of the government to go directly and help people, being a true progressive. Trying to make things better for the common American. And his square deal was a fair deal for all Americans that would try to fix corrupt corporations, conserve the environment, and protect consumers, those three C's. Taft is not as much of a go-getter. He was a bit more laid back temperamentally. He's a bit more conservative than Teddy was, but he is also a progressive. They were both Republicans, but they were really progressives in that they were using the power of the government to make things better versus previous governments before Teddy and Taft, and like we'll see the third progressive president, Woodrow Wilson. Before these progressives, the government was laissez-faire, right? The government wasn't doing a whole lot to help anybody. The government was basically sitting back and letting big business run the show. So all that being said, Taft is mainly going to be interested in the protecting, not so much protecting consumers, but mainly interested in the tackling of corrupt corporations. He's going to be a trust buster. He'll actually go after monopolies even more so than Teddy Roosevelt will. For Taft, he didn't sort monopolies into the good trust and the bad trust like Teddy. For Taft, if you were a monopoly, you were illegal. And he's actually going to go after the biggest monopoly of them all, right? The biggest president. Said I wouldn't bother anymore. I'm so sorry, Taft. I'm so sorry. But Taft is going to go after the biggest monopoly of them all, John D. Rockefeller's giant oil corporation, Standard Oil. And pursuing antitrust legislation under the Sherman Antitrust Act, Taft will have the Justice Department go after Rockefeller, the richest man in America, and finally track him down. And they will force Standard Oil to basically be redistributed, broken down, trust busted into 15 smaller oil companies, one of which will become Exxon. Exxon today is a remnant of that giant monopoly, Standard Oil. So Taft is going to pursue the antitrust legislation. It will also be under Taft that we will get the 16th Amendment, which ratifies just a few months before he leaves office in 1913. Now, the 16th Amendment is the graduated income tax. Remember that we talked about this with the Populist Party. Who's the populist? They are farmers. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. Populist Party, those poor farmers, those poor factory workers, the working class people of America who are going to team up to the Grange movement and then the Farmers Alliances to eventually form the Populist Party, led by William Jennings Bryan, who actually will run against and lose against Taft for his third time running for president in 1908. But all of this being said, the 16th Amendment, the graduate income tax, remember, this was a big deal for progressives. Progressives in general, they want the government to be able to do more things to help the common people. And to do so, the government's going to need more revenue, more money to do more stuff. And that's what the 16th Amendment does. It creates this income tax where all Americans, this is tax day, April 15th, all Americans have to pay their income taxes, a tax on what you earn for the previous year, your previous year's earnings. And it's graduated in the sense, graduation, every year you matriculate, you graduate up to the next grade, eventually you graduate high school. It means moving up. So a graduated income tax, very simply put, is a tax where the more you make, the more you have to pay. And the less you make, the less you pay. And you work under these income brackets. Now the brackets and the percentages that Americans have had to pay have changed over time. It started as like a 2% tax off of every $4,000 plus that people make. Today, the income brackets are totally different. You know, you have the poverty level, something close to like, if your family makes under $20,000 a year, you don't have to pay very much or any in taxes. You mainly get like a tax rebate, right? If your family is lower middle class, making $20,000 to $45,000 or $50,000 every year, then you would pay little in taxes. If your family makes over $50,000, like $50,000 to $80,000, you know, and so on. For the richest Americans, those making well over $100,000 a year, they're supposed to pay their fair share. We need these income taxes so the government can have money to pay for the military, to pay for, remember, the national parks that Teddy's wanting to conserve, to pay for roads, to pay for bridges, the interstate highway system, to pay for all these things that governments pay for. Progressives wanted the government to be bigger and to be able to do more. And so that's where this graduate income tax will come from. It's going to have far-ranging consequences. Not only do we still have to pay it today, every tax day, April 15th, but also in terms of later amendments, this will directly impact the ratification of the 18th Amendment, which some of you very astute students might already know is going to be prohibition when alcohol is made illegal. The reason that the 16th paves the way for the 18th is that, hey, a big reason why we don't want to make alcohol illegal is because the government used to make some pretty sick money off of taxing liquor. Remember way back with Hamilton and the Federalist Party, it was the whiskey excise tax that caused the whole thing, like the Whiskey Rebellion in 1795. So our country has a long, rich history of taxing alcohol. If you make alcohol illegal, the government's not going to be getting that tax money, that revenue. But now because of the 16th Amendment, you won't have to worry about that. The government now has a new source of revenue with the income tax. And so we were free to then make alcohol illegal. All right, so that's another thing that's going to happen under Taft. He is a progressive. He's going after the monopolies. We're going to get the 16th Amendment. But this is where Taft is going to fall a little short of his old buddy Teddy when it came to the environment, to our natural resources, to the land. Taft did not, he's a big dude. He doesn't even ride a horse because he would break the horse he rides in like a car or a carriage, okay? Taft does not care for the environment the way that Teddy does. He doesn't have the land and the connection to the environment and to nature the way that Teddy did. You know, Teddy felt like the environment had saved his life. He'd been that little asthmatic kid, right? Taft doesn't care. And so Taft is going to appoint a new Secretary of the Interior named Secretary Ballinger. And Ballinger is going to proclaim that when Teddy set aside those millions of acres that would become our national parks, that Teddy actually didn't have the authority to do that. And so Ballinger is going to make available those many millions of those acres that Teddy had set aside. Ballinger is going to reopen for private industries like mining companies, lumber companies. He's going to make it available for them to come and take up that land and to strip it of its resources. Teddy was off hunting on safari in Africa when he heard about Taft doing this. Luckily, Teddy's boy, Gifford Pinchot, the head of the forestry department, was still in the United States, and he vehemently protested what Ballinger and Taft were doing. But all Taft is going to do is basically say, shut up, and he fires Pinchot, Teddy's boy that was still trying to protect the land, and say, you can't do this, you can't give it away, sacrifice all these resources, you know, just for your companies. So Teddy hears about this while he's on safari, that not only did Taft like sell off the land that Teddy had set aside, but he fired Teddy's boy Pinchot that was trying to look after it. And so Teddy's coming back from Africa in a huff, and he's got his dander up. He is really upset with his good buddy Taft because, you know, Teddy had stepped aside after 8 years as president. Teddy hadn't even been elected twice. He was enormously popular. He could have ran again in 1908, but he chose to step down because, remember, he'd served out the rest of McKinley's term after McKinley's assassination. And then he served his 4 years, and then he said, okay, you know, Washington only served, you know, about 8 years. I'm going to step down now, and I'm going to leave the country. my square deal in good hands with old Taft. Taft, you take good care of her. I'm going to Africa. And he thought everything was fine. But Taft has betrayed Teddy's trust by selling off this land. This is what Teddy cares about, nature, the land. Taft has betrayed that trust. And so Teddy, as a result, is going to run against Taft in the election of 1912. And it is going to be an election for the ages. Before that, though, real quickly, Taft's foreign policy is just like everything else going to be a tiny bit more conservative than Teddy's was. Remember Teddy Roosevelt with his big stick policy and his Roosevelt corollary, he's using the United States military, our Great White Fleet, our Marines, to basically exert American influence abroad, especially in Latin America, where he says in the Roosevelt corollary, not just the Monroe Doctrine that, hey, this is our side of the Atlantic, Europe, stay away, we'll stay to ours, but that we are the police, we are the sheriffs of the New World, and we will be controlling and exerting authority and, you know, mitigating any conflicts in this region. And also, when I say spreading our influence, I mean protecting American businessmen abroad, American plantations or investors in Latin American companies. We're going to be protecting them using our forces and doing anything and everything to stabilize this region, interfering in a big way. Taft will do the same, but maybe less so when it came to, I'll be done quick. Taft will be the same, but maybe less so. Less when it came to the military and more about using American dollars, American money to spread American influence. This is called dollar diplomacy. So he's going to emphasize economic investment and loans from American banks rather than military intervention as Teddy had. The pen is mightier than the sword and all of that stuff. And dollar diplomacy, you can remember Taft is using money instead of the military. He will still use the Marines a little bit, but mostly like, you know, helping Latin American businessmen set up or helping Americans set up businesses in Cuba or in Honduras or in Nicaragua or in these places in Latin America. Banana Republics, they're called. Not Banana Republic, like the clothing company. Okay, and this paves the way for the election of 1912. It is a four-way contest, which is very rare in American politics. The last time we really had one of these was like 1824, the corrupt bargain. But four-way contest with four somewhat viable candidates. You have the Republican, William Howard Taft, the incumbent president. Now, in the Republican primary election in 1912, Taft actually had a opponent in the form of his former friend, his predecessor, Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy lost the Republican nomination because the establishment Republicans supported Taft, but Teddy is so mad that he's actually going to splinter off from the Republicans and form his own political third party. Our third party is neither Republican nor Democrat. That will be known as the Bull Moose Party. So this is Teddy Roosevelt's progressive party. So Teddy Roosevelt is running against his former friend, his chosen successor. In addition to Taft, the Republican, and Teddy, the progressive, you will also have the Democrat running named Woodrow Wilson, Ivy League professor and president of Princeton University, Southern gentleman, and very old school racist. Woodrow Wilson will be the Democratic candidate. And he's got some very high-minded ideas of freedom abroad, and we'll definitely be talking more about him. And then finally, the last of the four is going to be the socialist candidate that we've talked about before, named Eugene Debs. Eugene Debs of the Socialist Party wants more government control over private industry. And he actually had been a huge leader of labor rights and strikes from the late 1800s till here in 1912. And he was arrested many times. So when he runs for president in 1912, Eugene Debs actually ran from prison while he was under arrest, and is going to receive 6% of the American electorate. He was arrested for leading labor strikes, not for doing evil stuff. And let's see what happens. Also during this election, while giving a speech near Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Teddy Roosevelt, giving his hour-long stump speech, was attacked by a a drunken, disorderly, kind of unstable man who wanted to get famous for shooting the president. And this guy shot Teddy Roosevelt, former president of the United States, beloved, popular leader. He shoots Teddy Roosevelt in the chest, very close range. And Teddy Roosevelt was just supposed to go up and speak to this crowd on this big stage, and he gets shot in the chest at this bar on his way to go give the speech. And there was, in his coat pocket, there was a big, glasses case, steel framed glasses case that is going to actually help protect him from being shot through the chest by this bullet. The glasses case kind of absorbed some of the impact from the bullet. And then also his stump speech was rolled up like 80 pages, right next to the glasses case. And so those two things kind of slow the bullet. So it didn't penetrate his chest cavity deep enough to actually kill him. But he is like bleeding profusely and turning very pale. And of course, his assistants, his aides, want him to go to the hospital immediately. But Teddy Roosevelt, being the energizer, go-getter, buddy, candidate that he is, he refuses to give up. And he gets on the stage and he gives the entire speech before they finally cart him away to the hospital. And of course, he survives. He's Teddy Roosevelt. So we have a person running from prison. We have a former president being shot in the chest. And then you have Woodrow Wilson and Taft. And all four of these candidates, all four of them are probably more progressive, more left of center than most Democrats we have today. You have like an actual socialist running, like more socialist than Bernie Sanders. And even Taft, the far right Republican candidate at this point, would definitely be considered like a Democrat by today's standards. So this is a very progressive election with four very progressive candidates in their own rights. And because the Republican vote is split between the Republican choice, the Republican incumbent president Taft, and the former Republican president, the progressive now Bull Moose candidate Teddy, with that Republican vote being split, the way is paved for the Democrat to win. And this is how Woodrow Wilson is elected president of the United States, the only Democrat to be elected president from 1892, when Cleveland was elected, all the way till 1932, when finally FDR is elected. Wilson will be the only Democrat in between those 2 years. And Woodrow Wilson, remember WW, because he's going to be president during World War I. Okay. Now we will talk all about President Wilson in our next lecture. So I will talk to you then. Thank you guys for listening. Goodbye. Maybe goodbye. We'll see if the computer will load, because I'm of course filming this at school and it is super, super slow.